The janitor held the tiny blue creature against his chest as the alien battlecruiser's alarms blared overhead. The small being trembled in his arms, 6 eyes blinking in terror, but somehow it trusted him, a simple human maintenance worker who'd found it abandoned in the wreckage. This, he thought, is how humanity ends up adopting the heir to the galaxy's most feared empire. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I always love chatting with you, and it really helps support the channel. Also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Just 20 minutes earlier, Marcus Hayes had been doing what he always did on the Nexus station, cleaning up other people's messes with his mop and wondering how he'd ended up here, 300 light-years from Earth. Marcus was not having a good day. The artificial gravity had malfunctioned again in Sector 7, which meant he'd spent the morning mopping the same puddle of cleaning solution that kept floating back up to splatter across the ceiling. To make matters worse, the station's environmental controls were on the fritz, making the air uncomfortably humid, the kind of humidity that made his uniform stick to his back and had his thinning hair plastered to his forehead. Maintenance request completed in Sector 7. He muttered into his comm unit, knowing full well that nobody on the other end was actually listening. Moving to assess damage in the Eastern Quadrant. The damage was a polite way of referring to what had happened 3 days ago. A battle, brief but devastating, between 2 alien factions had left parts of Nexus Station in ruins. The diplomatic sector, where representatives from 17 different species normally conducted negotiations, now resembled a war zone. Most of the aliens had evacuated, and the humans, as usual, were left to clean up the mess. Marcus wheeled his cleaning cart through the debris-strewn corridors. Pieces of what had once been elegant furnishings crunched beneath his boots. Shattered view screens sparked occasionally, casting eerie blue flashes across the darkened hallway. The maintenance crew had restored emergency power, but full systems were still down in this section. Should have stayed on Earth, he grumbled to himself, a mantra he'd repeated daily since accepting this job 2 years ago. At 53, Marcus had thought working on a space station would be exciting, a fresh start after his divorce. The recruitment officer had painted such a rosy picture. Good pay, exotic locales, a chance to be part of humanity's great expansion into the stars. Nobody had mentioned that humanity's role in the galactic community largely involved janitorial services. Turns out, humans had a reputation for being exceptional cleaners, fixers, and general maintenance workers. We weren't the most technologically advanced species, but we were adaptable, resourceful, and, most importantly, willing to do the jobs no one else wanted. Marcus paused as his foot kicked something that skittered across the floor with a metallic ping. He bent down, his knees protesting, and picked up what appeared to be a ceremonial badge of some kind. It belonged to the Vorix delegation, judging by the distinctive crimson metal and sharp edges. The Vorix were a warrior species, tall, gray-skinned humanoids with ridged foreheads and a penchant for extremely formal diplomatic exchanges that often devolved into extremely formal combat. Another trophy for the collection, he muttered, pocketing the badge. His small quarters were filled with items he'd salvaged during his cleanup duties. Nothing valuable, just interesting alien artifacts that would otherwise have been disposed of. The corridor opened into what had once been the main diplomatic chamber, a vast, circular room with a high domed ceiling. Now, it was barely recognizable. The ceiling had partially collapsed, exposing the room to the vacuum of space, though emergency force fields had quickly deployed to prevent catastrophic decompression. Debris floated gently in the reduced gravity near the breach. Marcus whistled low. They really did a number on this place. His comm unit crackled. "Hayes, what's your status?" It was Supervisor Chun, sounding as impatient as ever. "Just reached the main chamber. It's a mess, ma'am. I don't need a status report on the obvious, Hayes. I need to know if it's safe for the repair crew to come in. Are there any structural integrity issues we should know about?" Marcus glanced around, his experienced eye assessing the damage. The force field is holding at the breach. Support beams look intact. I'd say it's stable enough for repairs to begin, but you'll want to bring in a proper engineer to confirm. Already on their way. Just finish your assessment and tag anything that looks like it might be salvageable. The bean counters upstairs want a full inventory of losses for the insurance claim. Copy that. The comm went silent, and Marcus sighed. He pulled out his scanner and began methodically working his way around the perimeter of the room, tagging pieces of furniture and equipment that could potentially be repaired. As he worked, he found himself drawn to the center of the chamber, where the diplomatic table had once stood. Now, there was only a twisted mass of metal and composite materials. The table had been designed to accommodate beings of widely varying sizes and physiologies, from the massive drover, who stood nearly 4 meters tall, to the tiny Minaru, who rarely exceeded 30 centimeters in height. Something caught his eye among the wreckage, a flicker of movement so slight he thought he might have imagined it. Marcus froze, listening intently. The station creaked and groaned around him, settling after the battle. But there was something else, a soft, high-pitched sound that didn't belong among the mechanical noises of the damaged station. Cautiously, he moved closer to the ruined table, pushing aside a section of bent metal. The sound came again, clearer this time. A cry? A whimper? "Hello," Marcus called out, feeling foolish. "Is someone there?" Only the soft whimpering answered him. Heart pounding, he carefully lifted a larger piece of debris, revealing a small alcove formed by the collapsed table. And there, huddled in the darkness, was a creature unlike any Marcus had seen before. It was small, about the size of a human infant, with soft blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the emergency lighting. 6 eyes, arranged in 2 vertical rows, blinked up at him fearfully. It had no hair, but a series of small, iridescent ridges ran from the top of its head down its back. 2 arms ended in delicate hands with 7 long, thin fingers each, while its lower body tapered into something resembling a tail rather than legs. The creature made that soft whimpering sound again, all 6 eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression that somehow transcended species barriers, pure, undiluted fear. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, crouching down to appear less threatening. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature shrank back further into its hiding place, trembling visibly now. Marcus noticed something clutched in its hands, a small device of some kind, glowing with a faint purple light. "You got separated from your parents, huh?" Marcus spoke in the same gentle tone he'd once used with his daughter when she was small and frightened by thunderstorms. "It's okay. We'll find them." He activated his comm unit. "Supervisor Chun, I've found a survivor in the diplomatic chamber. Some kind of child, I think. Blue skin, 6 eyes. Not sure what species." The silence that followed lasted several seconds too long. "Say again, Hayes?" "A blue child with 6 eyes. That's right. Small, about the size of a human baby. Seems scared but not injured as far as I can tell." Another long pause. "Hayes, listen carefully. Does this creature have ridges on its head and back? Shimmering blue skin?" "Yes, that's right." He heard Chin swear under her breath. "That's a Tesseran infant. Hayes, do not, I repeat, do not touch it. Security is on the way. Keep your distance until they arrive." Marcus frowned. "It's just a scared kid, ma'am. It's not dangerous." "That's not a kid, Hayes. It's a larval Tesseran. They're metamorphic beings. Highly unpredictable in that state, and the adults are, well, they've been at war with half the sector for the past decade. That's probably what the fighting was about. Just stay back and wait for security." Marcus looked at the trembling blue creature, still clutching its purple device. It didn't look dangerous. It looked terrified and alone. "Hayes, do you copy? Stay away from the Tesseran." "Copy that," Marcus replied automatically, but he made no move to back away from the small alien. The infant Tesseran made another soft sound, but this time it seemed less fearful and more curious. One of its 7-fingered hands reached out hesitantly toward Marcus. "Security team is 8 minutes out," Chin said. "Just hold position." "Will do," Marcus replied, then muted his comm. The Tesseran child was still reaching toward him, its 6 eyes blinking in an irregular pattern. Without really thinking about what he was doing, Marcus slowly extended his own hand, palm up, stopping just short of touching the alien. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, with surprising quickness, the Tesseract placed its small hand in Marcus's palm. The touch sent a strange tingling sensation up his arm, not unpleasant, just foreign. "There we go," Marcus said softly. "See? Nothing to be afraid of." The creature made a trilling sound that Marcus somehow knew expressed agreement. It was as if a connection had formed between them when they touched, not mind reading, exactly, but a vague sense of the being's emotional state. And what Marcus felt was abandonment. Profound, deliberate abandonment. This child hadn't been accidentally left behind in the evacuation. It had been left here intentionally. "They left you here, didn't they?" Marcus whispered, a surge of anger rising in his chest. "Your own people left you behind." The Tesseract's eyes blinked rapidly, and the emotional impression Marcus received seemed to confirm his suspicion. There was something else too, a sense of defectiveness or wrongness that the Tesseract associated with itself. Whatever this infant was, its own people had rejected it. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. The security team was arriving early. Without stopping to consider the consequences, Marcus made a decision. "Come on, little one," he said, gently gathering the small alien into his arms. It offered no resistance, instead curling against his chest with a soft, trilling sound. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Marcus quickly moved to the far side of the chamber, away from the main entrance. There was a service corridor that maintenance staff used, narrow and utilitarian, but it would allow him to avoid the security team, at least temporarily. "Hayes." Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Security is arriving now. Stay where you are." Marcus didn't respond. He was already slipping into the service corridor, the Tesseract infant cradled against his chest. The small purple device it had been holding was now pressed between them, pulsing with a slightly stronger light. As they moved through the dimly lit maintenance passage, Marcus tried to make sense of what he was doing. Defying orders, potentially risking his job, maybe even breaking station regulations or interstellar law, all for an alien infant he knew nothing about, from a species apparently at war with half the sector. Yet something about the small being's abandonment resonated deeply with him. Perhaps it was the echo of his own feelings since the divorce, the sense of being discarded by someone who was supposed to care. Or maybe it was the memory of his daughter, now grown and living on a colony world so distant they only spoke a few times a year. Whatever the reason, Marcus couldn't bring himself to hand this vulnerable creature over to security, who would likely treat it as a dangerous enemy rather than a child in need. The service corridor led to a junction where Marcus had to make a choice: left toward the residential sectors, or right toward the maintenance bay where his small workspace was located. He chose right, moving quickly but trying not to jostle the Tesseract too much. The maintenance bay was deserted at this hour, with most of the crew assigned to emergency repairs throughout the station. Marcus's workspace was little more than a cluttered desk in the corner, surrounded by shelves of cleaning supplies and repair tools. Not exactly an ideal hiding place, but it would have to do for now. He sat down heavily in his chair, the Tesseract still held securely in his arms. The creature had remained remarkably calm during their hurried journey, occasionally making soft, trilling sounds, but otherwise simply clinging to Marcus with its delicate 7-fingered hands. "What am I going to do with you?" Marcus murmured, looking down at the alien child. As if in response, the purple device between them pulsed brighter, and the Tesseract reached for it with one hand. When its fingers touched the device, a small holographic display appeared above it, showing symbols Marcus couldn't read. The Tesseract manipulated the symbols with surprising dexterity, and suddenly the holographic display changed to show text in Standard Galactic, the common language used throughout the known universe. Protocol Unit 7B, Marcus read aloud. Genetic Sample 39285X. Viability test failed. Disposal authorized. He looked at the small being in his arms with growing horror. They were going to dispose of you? Like trash. The Tesserant's 6 eyes blinked up at him, and Marcus felt that strange emotional connection again, a mixture of fear, sadness, and a desperate hope that was almost painful in its intensity. "Disposal is not authorized," Marcus said firmly, as if his words could somehow countermand whatever decision had been made about this child's fate. "Not while I have anything to say about it." His comm unit buzzed insistently. He knew he couldn't ignore it much longer without raising even more suspicion. Taking a deep breath, he activated it. "Hayes here." "What the hell are you doing, Hayes?" Chen's voice was tight with anger. "Security says you're not in the diplomatic chamber. Where are you? And where is the Tesserant larva?" Marcus looked down at the small blue being in his arms. "I'm in Section E, near maintenance. And I've got the Tesserant with me." "You what?" Chen's voice rose to a shout. "Are you out of your mind? That thing is dangerous. It's a child, ma'am. And it was abandoned. Deliberately left behind by its own people. That is not your call to make, Hayes. The Tesserants and the Vorics have been at war for years. That thing you're holding could be the reason for the attack on the station. You need to bring it to security immediately." The Tesserant trembled in Marcus's arms, and he felt a wave of fear that wasn't his own wash over him. It was reacting to Chen's tone, or perhaps to the mention of security. "I don't think that's the right call, ma'am," Marcus said, surprising himself with his calmness. "This isn't a weapon or a spy. It's a child that was going to be disposed of according to its own datapad. I'm not handing it over to be treated like a prisoner or a lab specimen. This isn't a debate, Hayes. That's a direct order." Marcus looked down at the 6 eyes staring up at him trustingly. In his 63 years of life, he'd never directly disobeyed an order, not in his brief military service, not in any of his subsequent jobs. He'd always been the reliable one, the steady hand, the guy who followed the rules. But there had to be exceptions. There had to be times when the rules were wrong. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't do that." Chen's voice turned cold. "Security is already on their way to your location, Hayes. This little act of insubordination is going to cost you your job, maybe even more." The comm went dead, and Marcus was left in silence, broken only by the soft trilling of the Tesserant infant. "Well, little one," he said with a rueful smile, "looks like we're both in trouble now." The maintenance bay had limited options for hiding or escape. There were ventilation ducts, but they were too small for Marcus to fit through, though the Tesserant could probably manage it. There were supply closets, but they'd be the first place security would look. The emergency evacuation pods were nearby, but using one without authorization would set off every alarm on the station. Marcus's gaze fell on his collection of salvaged alien artifacts, prominently displayed on a shelf above his desk. Among them was a small device he'd found months ago, a personal cloaking generator from the Silterans, a reclusive species known for their advanced stealth technology. He'd never gotten it to work properly, but maybe. The sound of boots in the corridor outside spurred him into action. Holding the Tesserant with one arm, he grabbed the cloaking device with his free hand and pressed what he hoped was the activation switch. Nothing happened. The footsteps grew louder. Marcus frantically examined the device, trying to remember what little he knew about Silteran technology. There was a small indentation on one side that might be a biometric scanner. He pressed his thumb against it, and the device hummed to life, projecting a faint shimmer around his hand. The door to the maintenance bay slid open, revealing 2 security officers in the standard blue uniforms of Nexus Station. They scanned the room, weapons drawn. "Empty," said one, a tall woman with a severe expression. "Chen said he'd be here." "Check the closets," the other officer replied, moving further into the room. Marcus held his breath, standing completely still near his desk. The cloaking device seemed to be working, bending light around him and the Tesserant, rendering them invisible, or at least, he hoped it was working. The device was warm in his hand, which he took as a good sign. The Tesserant, perhaps sensing the need for silence, remained perfectly still in his arms, its trilling sounds quieted. The security officers methodically searched the maintenance bay, opening closets, checking under tables, even looking up at the ventilation ducts. They passed within inches of Marcus several times, close enough that he could have reached out and touched them. "He's not here," the female officer finally said. "He must have moved to another section." "Alert all teams to expand the search," her partner replied. "And put the station on lockdown. No shuttles or pods leave until we find him and the alien." They left the maintenance bay, the door sliding shut behind them. Marcus waited a full minute before deactivating the cloaking device, relief washing over him. "That was close," he whispered to the Tesseract, who responded with a soft trill that somehow conveyed both agreement and gratitude. But their reprieve would be short-lived. The station was going into lockdown, and every security officer would be looking for them. They needed a plan, and fast. Marcus set the Tesseract down on his desk, keeping one hand gently on its back for reassurance. With his other hand, he activated his personal terminal and pulled up a station schematic. "Okay, little one. We need to find a way off this station, or at least a better hiding place until I can figure this out." The Tesseract reached for its purple device again, manipulating the holographic controls. The display changed to show what appeared to be a map of Nexus Station, with a specific section highlighted, the diplomatic docking bay where the alien delegation's ships were kept. "You want to go to the ships?" Marcus asked, studying the display. "But they'll be guarded, especially during a lockdown." The Tesseract's fingers moved deftly over the controls, and the display zoomed in on a particular vessel, sleek, with distinctive blue and silver markings. Tesseract design, unmistakably. "That's your people's ship," Marcus said. "But I thought they abandoned you. Why would we go there?" The creature trilled softly, and Marcus felt a complex emotional message: determination, necessity, and something like revenge? Not quite that, but a desire for justice or resolution. "You have a plan," Marcus realized, looking at the small being with newfound respect. "Or at least, you know something I don't." The Tesseract blinked its 6 eyes in what Marcus interpreted as affirmation. "All right then," he said, making a decision. "The diplomatic docking bay it is. But we'll need to be careful. Very careful." Marcus gathered a few supplies: the Siltran cloaking device, some emergency rations, a multi-tool, and a small medkit. He placed everything in a maintenance pouch that he strapped to his belt, then carefully picked up the Tesseract again. "Ready?" he asked. The creature trilled softly, clutching its purple device tightly. Marcus took a deep breath, and together they slipped out of the maintenance bay into the corridor beyond, 2 fugitives on a station that was hunting them, a human janitor and an alien child that no one wanted. The corridors of Nexus Station had never seemed so threatening. Every corner, every junction represented potential discovery and capture. Marcus moved as quietly as possible, the Tesseract infant held securely against his chest. They avoided the main thoroughfares, sticking to service passages and maintenance tunnels that Marcus knew well from his years of work. Twice they had to freeze and activate the cloaking device as security patrols passed nearby. The Siltran technology worked flawlessly, but Marcus was acutely aware that its power source wouldn't last forever. They needed to reach the diplomatic docking bay soon. As they approached the diplomatic sector, security presence increased dramatically. Marcus paused in a utility closet to assess their options, setting the Tesseract down on a shelf while he consulted his terminal. "The main entrance to the docking bay will be heavily guarded," he whispered. "But there might be another way." The Tesseract trilled softly and pointed to a section of the station schematic, a small maintenance access point that led directly to the environmental control systems for the diplomatic vessels. "How did you know about that?" Marcus asked, surprised. The creature simply blinked its 6 eyes at him, and Marcus felt that strange emotional connection again, a sense of knowledge and purpose that seemed far beyond what one would expect from an infant. "You're not just a child, are you?" Marcus murmured. "There's more to you than they wanted anyone to know." The Tesseract didn't respond, but something in its gaze seemed to confirm Marcus's suspicion. They continued their journey, now following the path to the maintenance access point. It was a tight squeeze for Marcus. These passages were designed for maintenance drones rather than human workers, but he managed to wriggle through, the Tesseran clinging to his back. Finally, they emerged into the environmental control room for the diplomatic docking bay. Through a large viewport, Marcus could see the various alien vessels docked in their respective bays. The Tesseran ship was easy to spot, a sleek, blue-silver craft that seemed to shimmer slightly under the bay's lighting. "There it is," Marcus said. "But how do we get to it without being seen?" "The bay is crawling with security." The Tesseran climbed down from Marcus's back and approached the control panel. Its seven-fingered hands moved with surprising confidence over the alien interface, and suddenly the bay's main lighting system shut down, plunging the area into near darkness. Emergency lights came on seconds later, casting everything in a dim red glow. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. "Attention, all personnel," came an automated voice over the station's comm system. "Environmental system failure detected in diplomatic docking bay. All non-essential personnel, please evacuate the area immediately." Marcus stared at the Tesseran in amazement. "Did you just create a diversion?" The creature trilled what seemed like an affirmative, then pointed urgently toward a door that would lead them into the bay itself. "Right," Marcus said, gathering the Tesseran into his arms again. "Let's not waste it." They slipped through the door and into the chaotic scene of the docking bay. Security officers were moving personnel toward the exits, while engineers rushed to diagnose the supposed environmental failure. In the confusion, Marcus was able to move along the edge of the bay, staying in the shadows cast by the emergency lighting. The Tesseran ship loomed before them, its entry ramp sealed. Marcus approached cautiously, expecting more security, but the area around the vessel was deserted. Everyone was too focused on the environmental alert. "How do we get in?" Marcus whispered. The Tesseran held up its purple device, which pulsed with a brighter light. A moment later, a section of the ship's hull shimmered and an opening appeared. Not a conventional door or ramp, but a sort of portal that hadn't been visible before. Marcus hesitated only briefly before stepping through. The opening sealed behind them, leaving them in a dimly lit corridor of obviously alien design. The walls had a faintly organic quality to them, with subtle patterns that seemed to shift and move when viewed from different angles. "Now what?" Marcus asked, looking around uncertainly. The Tesseran squirmed in his arms, clearly wanting to be put down. Marcus complied, and the small being immediately scurried down the corridor with surprising speed, its tail-like lower body allowing it to move with a graceful undulation. Marcus followed, having to jog to keep up. They passed through several chambers of increasing complexity, some filled with what looked like scientific equipment, others that might have been living quarters. Finally, they reached what was unmistakably the bridge of the vessel. A large view screen dominated one wall, currently showing the interior of the docking bay. Control interfaces lined the other walls, all designed for beings with seven-fingered hands. The Tesseran moved to a central pedestal and placed its purple device into a slot that seemed made for it. Immediately, the ship hummed to life around them, lights brightening and control surfaces illuminating with complex symbols. A holographic display appeared above the pedestal, showing what appeared to be a Tesseran adult, tall and elegant, with the same blue skin and 6 eyes as the infant, but with more pronounced ridges and a regal bearing. The hologram spoke in a musical language that Marcus couldn't understand. The infant Tesseran responded in the same language, its childlike voice nevertheless conveying urgency and determination. After a brief exchange, the hologram flickered and then reformed, now speaking in standard galactic. "Protocol override accepted. Emergency departure sequence initiated. Warning, unauthorized launch will trigger station security protocols." Marcus felt a surge of panic. "Wait, we're launching? Now." "But the station is on lockdown." The Tesseran looked at him with its 6 eyes, and Marcus felt a wave of what could only be described as resolve. Whatever this child's plan was, it was committed to seeing it through. The ship's engines thrummed to life, a deep vibration that Marcus could feel through the deck plates. On the view screen, He could see security personnel in the docking bay suddenly noticing the activity around the Tesseran vessel, pointing and shouting silently beyond the ship's hull. "Warning," came the ship's automated voice. "Docking clamps engaged. Launch not possible without proper release protocols." The Tesseran trilled something that sounded frustrated, its hands moving rapidly over the control interface. "They've locked us down," Marcus said, understanding the situation even without knowing the specifics of Tesseran technology. "We can't leave." The view screen now showed security forces surrounding the vessel, some setting up what looked like portable energy barricades. A figure that Marcus recognized as Supervisor Chun was visible, gesticulating angrily and apparently issuing orders. The Tesseran made a series of urgent trilling sounds, and the ship's computer responded. Unable to comply. Docking clamps physically prevent departure. External override required. Marcus looked at the small blue being, whose determination seemed to be giving way to despair. Whatever plan it had, this obstacle hadn't been anticipated. "Hey," Marcus said gently, crouching down to the Tesseran's level. "Don't give up yet. I'm pretty good at fixing things, remember? That's my job." The creature looked at him, all 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "Can the ship show me the docking mechanism?" Marcus asked. "Maybe there's a way to release it manually." The Tesseran trilled something to the computer, and the view screen changed to show an external view of the ship's docking points, where heavy mechanical clamps held it securely to the station. Marcus studied the mechanism. It was alien technology, but mechanical systems tended to follow certain universal principles. After a moment, he spotted what looked like an emergency release panel near one of the clamps. "There," he said, pointing. "That panel. It should have a manual override for the clamps. But someone would have to go outside the ship to reach it." The Tesseran made a sound that Marcus somehow knew expressed dismay. "I'll go," Marcus said, surprising himself with the offer. "I'll need an environment suit, though. Is there one on board?" The Tesseran hesitated, then trilled a command to the ship's computer. A section of the wall slid open, revealing what appeared to be a storage compartment containing several suits designed for Tesseran physiology. Far too large for the infant, but potentially workable for Marcus despite the differences in body structure. "This might work," Marcus said, examining one of the suits. It was designed for a being with 2 arms but a tail-like lower body. With some adjustments, he could make it fit well enough for a brief excursion. "Help me figure out how to operate this thing." The next few minutes were a crash course in alien technology, with the Tesseran using its purple device to translate key instructions and demonstrate the suit's functions. Marcus worked quickly, aware that time was running out before security found a way to breach the ship. Finally, he was sealed inside the Tesseran environment suit, a strange but not uncomfortable experience. The helmet was designed for a 6-eyed being, giving Marcus an oddly expanded field of vision through its transparent faceplate. "Okay," he said, his voice sounding strange through the suit's communication system. "How do I get outside?" The Tesseran led him to a small chamber that was clearly an airlock. Once inside, Marcus took a deep breath as the inner door sealed behind him. "Here goes nothing," he muttered as the air cycled out and the outer door began to open, revealing the docking bay beyond. Marcus emerged from the airlock onto the exterior of the Tesseran ship, magnetic boots keeping him secured to the hull. From this vantage point, he could see the security forces gathered below, their attention focused on the main entry points of the vessel. None of them were looking up, giving him a momentary advantage. Moving carefully along the curved surface of the ship, Marcus made his way toward the nearest docking clamp. The emergency release panel was just where he'd spotted it on the view screen, a small access hatch set into the station structure near the point where the clamp attached to the ship. Marcus reached the panel and pried it open with his multi-tool, revealing a complex array of circuitry and mechanical components. It was alien technology, but Marcus had spent years repairing and maintaining systems all over Nexus Station. The basic principles were similar enough. "Okay," he whispered to himself. "Red wire is probably power. Blue looks like a safety interlock. And this yellow one." He carefully disconnected several components and rearranged others, creating a bypass that should trick the system into thinking proper release protocols had been followed. The clamp shuddered but remained engaged. "Come on," Marcus muttered, making another adjustment. With a loud clank that he could feel through his boots, the first clamp disengaged. One down, 3 to go. But the sound had attracted attention. Looking down, Marcus could see security officers pointing up at him, some reaching for weapons. "Got to move faster," he said, already making his way to the next clamp. The process was easier now that he knew what to do. The second clamp released more quickly than the third. As he worked on the final clamp, energy blasts began hitting the hull near him. Security forces firing stun weapons, trying to incapacitate him without damaging the ship. Marcus's hands were steady as he made the final connections. The last clamp released with a satisfying clunk, and he felt the ship begin to move slightly, now free of its restraints. "We did it," he called, though there was no one to hear him except the Tesseran child inside the ship. Now he just needed to get back to the airlock. Marcus turned and found himself face to face with a security officer in a station environment suit, hovering just off the hull with a jetpack. The officer raised a stun baton. "Stand down, Hayes," came Supervisor Chin's voice through his comm system. "This has gone far enough." Marcus took a step back, acutely aware of the void of space just beyond the station's artificial gravity field. "I can't do that, ma'am. You know what they'll do to the child." "That is not a child." Chin's voice was sharp with frustration. "Tesseran larvae are basically biological computers. They're programmed before they even develop consciousness. Whatever it's making you think, whatever it's making you feel, it's not real." "Feels pretty real to me," Marcus replied, continuing to edge backward toward the airlock. "The Tesserans left it behind for a reason, Hayes. It's defective, probably dangerous. You're being manipulated." Marcus thought about the small blue being, its 6 eyes looking up at him with trust and hope. Maybe Chin was right. Maybe it was manipulating him somehow. But did that change anything? It was still abandoned, still slated for disposal, like some faulty piece of equipment. "I'm not turning back now," Marcus said, his resolve hardening. "We're leaving. There's nowhere for you to go." Chin's voice had an edge of desperation now. "The Tesserans won't take it back, and no human colony will accept an alien fugitive. Don't throw your life away for this thing." Marcus had almost reached the airlock when the security officer lunged at him with the stun baton. He ducked, the weapon missing him by centimeters, but the sudden movement caused him to lose his footing. The magnetic boots slipped on the smooth hull, and Marcus found himself floating free, drifting away from the ship toward the cold emptiness of space. Panic surged through him. The Tesseran environment suit wasn't equipped with a jetpack or maneuvering thrusters. There was nothing to push against, no way to propel himself back to safety. He was going to drift away and die alone in the void. Then, impossibly, the airlock opened again. The small form of the Tesseran infant appeared, somehow wearing a miniature version of an environment suit. It launched itself from the airlock with surprising grace, a thin filament trailing behind it connected to the ship. The Tesseran's momentum carried it directly to Marcus. Its small 7-fingered hands grabbed his arm with surprising strength, and Marcus felt the gentle but insistent pull of the filament drawing them both back toward the ship. "You came for me," Marcus said, awe in his voice. The Tesseran trilled something that, even through the suit's communications, Marcus understood as, "Of course." They reached the airlock, tumbling inside together as the outer door sealed behind them. Air hissed back into the chamber, and Marcus removed his helmet, breathing deeply. The Tesseran did the same, its 6 eyes blinking at him in what seemed like concern. "I'm okay," Marcus assured it. "Thanks to you." A tremor ran through the ship, and Marcus realized they were moving. The vessel was pulling away from the docking bay, accelerating rapidly. They made their way back to the bridge, where the view screen now showed Nexus Station falling away behind them. Warning symbols flashed across the control interfaces. "Pursuit craft launching," the ship's computer announced. "Estimated interception in 4 minutes." The Tesseran made a series of urgent trilling sounds, manipulating the controls with its small hands. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, watching as new displays appeared, showing what looked like complex navigational calculations. The holographic adult Tesseran appeared again, speaking in standard Galactic. "Warning, Dimensional Shift Protocol requires approval from Senior Genetic Architect. Override codes not recognized." The infant Tesseran trilled something that sounded almost angry, then inserted its purple device into the control pedestal again. The hologram flickered, then nodded. "Override accepted. Emergency protocols engaged. Dimensional shift in 30 seconds. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Dimensional shift? What does that mean? The Tesseran looked at him, and through their strange emotional connection, Marcus felt something that could only be described as excitement mixed with vindication. "Station security vessels closing," the computer announced. "Weapons lock detected." The Tesseran made a final adjustment to the controls, then moved to Marcus's side, taking his hand in its small one. The gesture was unmistakable. "Stay with me. Trust me." Dimensional shift in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The universe seemed to fold around them. Marcus felt a moment of intense disorientation, as if his body were being turned inside out and back again. The view screen showed a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, then cleared to reveal nothing. Empty space. No Nexus station, no pursuit vessels. Just stars, unfamiliar constellations against the velvet blackness. "Where are we?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Tesseran released his hand and returned to the control pedestal. New displays appeared, showing what looked like stellar cartography. Marcus couldn't read the symbols, but he understood enough to realize they were very, very far from where they had been. "Transit successful," the ship's computer announced. "Dimensional barrier intact. Pursuing vessels unable to follow." The Tesseran made a sound that Marcus had never heard from it before, something like laughter, high and musical. The holographic adult Tesseran reappeared, but now its demeanor seemed different, less formal, more animated. It spoke in standard Galactic. "Congratulations, Genetic Sample 39285X. You have successfully completed the test. Returning to primary Tesseran dimensional anchor." Marcus frowned. "Test? What test?" The Tesseran looked up at him, and for the first time, Marcus felt as if it were trying to communicate directly through their emotional connection. A complex mixture of feelings flowed into him: satisfaction, triumph, gratitude, and something else: an explanation. The hologram continued speaking. "The ability to inspire empathy and cooperation across species boundaries was considered theoretical. Your viability as a diplomatic interface has been confirmed. Welcome to the Tesseran Genetic Continuity Program." Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place in Marcus's mind. "You weren't abandoned," he said, looking at the small blue being. "You were planted. This was all some kind of test." The Tesseran trilled, and somehow Marcus understood. Not quite, not exactly. The hologram seemed to address his question. Genetic Sample 39285X was indeed scheduled for disposal due to perceived defects in its empathic architecture. Standard protocols would have terminated the sample. However, the sample itself proposed an alternative viability test to be left in a controlled environment with potential cross-species interaction. The Diplomatic Council approved the proposal with a 97% expectation of failure. Marcus sat down heavily in what appeared to be a command chair. So the battle, the abandonment, it was all staged? The Tesseran trilled a negative, and the hologram elaborated. The diplomatic incident between Tesseran and Vorix delegations was genuine. The opportunity was seized to implement the sample's proposed test. Contingency plans were in place for retrieval if the test failed. But it didn't fail, Marcus said quietly, looking at the small blue being who had changed his life in the span of a few hours. "You found me, or I found you, and here we are." The Tesseran moved closer to him, placing one of its small hands on his knee in a gesture that seemed profoundly human. Through their connection, Marcus felt its gratitude, its joy at being validated, and something else, concern for him. "What happens now?" he asked, addressing both the Tesseran and the hologram. "The sample will be integrated into the Tesseran diplomatic core, its unique empathic architecture studied and potentially replicated. Its status has been upgraded from disposable to valuable." "And me?" Marcus asked. "I'm guessing you can return me to Nexus Station, where I'll probably be fired, possibly arrested, and definitely have a lot of explaining to do." The hologram seemed to consult with the infant Tesseran, who trilled at length. "The sample proposes an alternative," the hologram finally said. "It requests that you be offered a position as a cultural liaison to the Tesseran diplomatic corps. Your demonstrated capacity for empathy with a non-human entity, combined with your technical skills, would be considered valuable. The position would include relocation to Tesseran space, with appropriate compensation and living arrangements." Marcus stared at the Tesseran in disbelief. "You're offering me a job?" The creature trilled what was unmistakably an affirmative, its 6 eyes watching him hopefully. For a moment, Marcus thought about his life on Nexus Station, the endless cleaning, the loneliness, the feeling of being just another anonymous maintenance worker in humanity's grand expansion into the stars. He thought about his apartment on Earth that he rarely visited, his daughter who had her own life now, the collection of alien trinkets that were his only real possessions. Then he looked at the small blue being that had trusted him, that had literally saved him from drifting away into the void of space. A being that had been deemed defective because it felt too much, connected too deeply with those unlike itself. "I'm not really qualified to be a diplomat," Marcus said slowly. The Tesseran trilled something, and the hologram translated. "The sample states that your qualifications are precisely what saved it from disposal. Your empathy, your willingness to risk yourself for an unknown entity, your technical adaptability. These are the qualities the Tesseran diplomatic corps currently lacks." Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "So you're saying the most advanced diplomatic corps in the galaxy needs a janitor?" The Tesseran made that musical laughing sound again, and through their connection, Marcus felt its agreement. Yes, that's exactly what they needed. Someone who knew how to clean up messes, fix what was broken, and see value in what others discarded. The sample further states, the hologram continued, that your presence would be comfortable. The last word seemed inadequate for the feeling that flowed between them, a sense of belonging, of having found someone who understood what it meant to be overlooked, undervalued, yet essential. "Well," Marcus said, his voice rough with unexpected emotion, "when you put it that way, how can I refuse? But I have one condition." The Tesseran tilted its head questioningly. "You need a name. I can't keep calling you the sample or the Tesseran. If we're going to work together, you need a proper name." The creature considered this, then trilled something to the hologram. "The sample acknowledges this cultural necessity and defers to your naming conventions." Marcus thought for a moment, looking at the small blue being with its 6 curious eyes and delicate 7-fingered hands. A being that had been scheduled for disposal, but had instead engineered its own salvation by connecting with him. A simple human janitor. "How about hope?" he suggested. "Because that's what you represent. Hope that different species can connect, understand each other. Hope that what others see as defects might actually be strengths." The Tesseran, "Hope," trilled with obvious pleasure, and the emotional feedback Marcus received was pure joy. "The designation is accepted," the hologram confirmed. "Hope will be integrated into official records as a diplomatic liaison with specialized empathic architecture." Marcus smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "So, Hope, where are we headed?" Hope trilled to the computer, and a new star map appeared on the view screen. A journey to somewhere new, somewhere neither of them had been before. "Coordinates set for Tesseran Prime," the computer announced. "Estimated arrival in 3 standard days." As the ship accelerated toward its destination, Marcus looked at his new companion, a child of another species, deemed unwanted by its own people, now headed home with a purpose and a future. "You know," Marcus said, settling back in the command chair, "I've spent my whole life cleaning up other people's messes. Never thought I'd end up as a diplomat. Hope trilled what felt like amusement, climbing into his lap with the casual trust of a child who knows it's safe. But then again, Marcus continued, gently placing a hand on Hope's back. Maybe that's exactly what diplomacy is, cleaning up messes between people or species who don't understand each other. Finding value in what others throw away. Seeing connections where others see only differences. Hope trilled softly in agreement, its 6 eyes beginning to blink more slowly as fatigue overtook the small being. As the stars streaked by on the view screen, Marcus Hayes, former janitor, now cultural liaison to the Tesseran diplomatic corps, sat quietly, holding the alien child no one had wanted. Except him. And sometimes he was beginning to realize that was enough to change everything. 3 months later, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the vast crystalline structures of Tesseran Prime's diplomatic quarter. The view still took his breath away, towering spires that seemed to be made of living crystal, shimmering with internal light that changed colors with the time of day. Currently, the late afternoon sun cast everything in a warm purple glow that reminded him of Hope's data device. Speaking of Hope, the young Tesseran was no longer quite so small. In the 3 months since their arrival, Hope had undergone the first stage of metamorphosis, growing almost 30 centimeters in height and developing more pronounced ridges along its spine. The medical staff had explained that Hope was maturing more rapidly than normal, perhaps due to the stress of the test, or perhaps because of Hope's unique genetic architecture. Ambassador Hayes, came a musical voice from behind him. The Vorix delegation has arrived and is requesting your presence at the preliminary meeting. Marcus turned to see Alara, his Tesseran assistant. Like all adult Tesserans, she was tall and elegant, her blue skin shimmering slightly in the light. Unlike most, she had taken a keen interest in human culture and had even adopted a name that she felt humans could pronounce easily. Thank you, Alara, Marcus replied. And please, how many times do I have to tell you to call me Marcus? At least once more, Ambassador, she said with a trilling laugh. Protocol must be observed when others are present. Marcus sighed good-naturedly. The Tesseran's adherence to formal protocol had been one of the bigger adjustments in his new role. As cultural liaison, he was technically an ambassador, representing not only humanity, but also serving as a bridge between Tesseran culture and those of other species. Is Hope already there? He asked, following Alara back inside. Yes, diplomatic initiate Hope is attending as an observer. The Genetic Council is most interested in monitoring its performance in high-stress diplomatic situations. Marcus frowned slightly. He still didn't like the way some of the Tesseran officials referred to Hope as it rather than they or them, which was the compromise Marcus had suggested. Old prejudices died hard, even among supposedly advanced species. The preliminary meeting was being held in one of the smaller crystal chambers, its walls programmed to remain opaque for privacy. As Marcus entered, he immediately spotted Hope sitting quietly in a corner, observing the proceedings with all 6 eyes attentive. The Vorix delegates were seated at one side of the circular table, massive, gray-skinned beings with ridged foreheads and stern expressions. Their war with the Tesserans had officially ended just 1 month ago, largely due to the revelation of Hope's existence and successful integration. The idea that Tesserans were developing diplomats specifically designed to empathize with other species had apparently given the Vorix leadership pause. Ambassador Hayes, rumbled the lead Vorix delegate, rising to its impressive height of nearly 3 meters. We have heard much about the human who changed Tesseran diplomatic policy. Marcus bowed slightly, as was Vorix custom. High Commander Drock, the reports of my influence are greatly exaggerated. I simply recognized value where others saw difference. The Vorix made a sound that might have been approval. Direct speech. Good. We tire of Tesseran verbal complexities. From the corner of his eye, Marcus could see Hope watching intently, absorbing every nuance of the interaction. That was Hope's gift, the ability to understand and internalize the subtle cultural cues that most beings missed. The meeting proceeded smoothly, with Marcus helping to translate not just words but cultural contexts between the two longtime enemies. It was delicate work, requiring him to draw on skills he'd never known he possessed. Yet somehow, being a maintenance worker had prepared him perfectly, identifying problems, finding practical solutions, cleaning up communication messes before they became disasters. When the meeting concluded, the Vorix departed with what seemed like grudging respect, and the Tesseran officials filed out, discussing the next steps in the peace process. Hope remained behind, approaching Marcus with the boundless energy of youth. "You did well," Marcus said, smiling at his young friend. "I saw you taking notes the whole time." Hope trilled excitedly, the sound more complex and nuanced than it had been 3 months ago. Through their empathic connection, which had only grown stronger with time, Marcus felt Hope's pride and enthusiasm. "The Vorix cultural markers are fascinating," Hope said in the fluent standard Galactic that it had mastered within weeks of their arrival. "Their aggression displays are actually requests for honesty, not threats as most species interpret them." Marcus nodded. "That's exactly right. And that's why you're going to be an amazing diplomat someday. You see past the surface to what's really being communicated." Hope's ridges flushed a deeper blue with pleasure at the compliment. "I had an excellent teacher." "A janitor, you mean?" Marcus said with a wink. "The best kind of teacher," Hope insisted. "One who knows how to clean up messes and find treasure in what others throw away." As they walked together through the crystalline corridors of the diplomatic quarter, Marcus marveled at how completely his life had changed. From pushing a mop on Nexus Station to helping broker peace between warring alien species, all because he couldn't ignore a small, abandoned child in need. That evening, as was their custom, Marcus and Hope had dinner together in the comfortable quarters they shared. While Marcus had been given a luxurious apartment befitting his ambassadorial status, Hope often stayed with him rather than in the initiate dormitories. No one questioned this arrangement. It was understood that their unusual bond was to be preserved and studied. "I received a message from my daughter today," Marcus said as they ate. "She's thinking of visiting next month." Hope's eyes brightened. "Sarah is coming here? To Tesseran Prime?" "She's curious to meet you," Marcus said, "and probably to see if her old dad has really become an important diplomat or if it's all an elaborate prank." Hope trilled with laughter. "Will she like me, do you think?" The question carried a weight of insecurity that Marcus could feel through their connection. For all of Hope's growing confidence, there remained the echo of being deemed defective, unwanted. "She'll love you," Marcus assured him. "How could she not? You saved her father's life, gave him purpose again. And besides, you two are a lot alike, stubborn, curious, always questioning the rules." Hope seemed satisfied with this answer and returned to eating the specialized nutrient gel that comprised the Tesseran diet. Marcus had tried it once, out of politeness, and had needed 3 glasses of water to get the taste out of his mouth. After dinner, they stood on the balcony watching the 3 moons of Tesseran Prime rise above the horizon. The smallest moon glowed with a faint purple light, remarkably similar to Hope's data device, which the young Tesseran still carried everywhere. "Marcus," Hope said quietly, using his first name as they always did in private. "Do you ever regret it? Coming with me, leaving everything behind?" Marcus considered the question seriously, as he always did when Hope asked something important. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret it. On Nexus Station, I was just maintaining things, keeping systems running that would eventually break down anyway. Here, I'm helping build something, understanding between species, connections that might last for generations." He looked down at Hope, who had grown so much in such a short time, but who still sometimes needed reassurance, just like any child. "Besides, I didn't leave everything behind. I brought the most important things with me: my capacity to care, my ability to fix what's broken, and my belief that every being deserves a chance, no matter how different they might seem." Hope's 6 eyes blinked in the pattern that Marcus had come to recognize as deep emotion. "I was supposed to be disposed of," Hope said softly. "Erased from existence because my empathic architecture was too sensitive, too open to non-Tesseran patterns. Now they're studying me as a model for the future. That's because someone gave you a chance to show what you could do, Marcus said. Sometimes that's all any of us need. Just one person who sees our potential instead of our problems. As the three moons climbed higher in the alien sky, a human janitor and a once unwanted alien child stood side by side, united by an empathic bond that transcended species and changed the course of galactic diplomacy. They had found in each other something neither knew they were looking for, a family, built not on shared biology, but on shared compassion. In the vast expanse of the universe, with its countless species and civilizations, perhaps that was the most revolutionary discovery of all. That family could be found in the most unexpected places, even among the ruins of war, where a human janitor found an alien baby that no one wanted. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.